Hello everyone, my name is Megan and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. I hope you guys are doing well and staying safe. Today we are here to talk about the top 10 books I read in 2021. 2021 has been a very weird reading year for me. I've read a lot less books than I have in previous years, due mostly to health conditions and university. However, I did still read some very incredible books, and so we're going to go in order from number 10 to number 1. I use the CAWPILE rating system created by G at Book Roast for all of the rating of my books, and so therefore I can really put them in an order. The video explaining the CAWPILE system will be linked in my description if you are unfamiliar with it, and without further ado, let's hop on in. Coming in at number 10 is actually a tie between two books that I read from the same author in the same series, so I will talk about them together, and those are Fallen Star and Rising Star by Susanna Nix. These covers aren't the best, admittedly, but I absolutely adored these stories. These are all part of the Starstruck novel series, essentially following a movie star or some sort of Hollywood star and then kind of more of a basic, normal person. And in Rising Star, we follow this girl who is writing her PhD in sociology, and she's also taken on this side hustle gig where she's kind of like an extra on shows in order to be able to, you know, make a little bit of money while she's at school. And one of the main actors in the setting where she's doing like her extra job is actually looking for a dog sitter, and she ends up dog sitting for him, and they spend more time together and eventually fall in love, and I just love this. And then we have Fallen Star, which deals with this boy who is, well, was like a up-and-coming star, but then he has some problematic behaviors, and then our female main character will kind of help him through that and help him get back on track. And again, they fall in love. I don't want to talk too much about these because I know they're easily spoiled. However, do check trigger warnings if you're going to read these, because they do have some heavier topics such as addiction and these things. I especially love the writing style in these, as well as the tropes used. I will never get tired of these tropes. They are my favorite. I love the famous person trope, and these do it so incredibly well. They are very underhyped as well. I don't hear anyone talking about these. A third book in this series is supposed to come out in 2022, and I am incredibly excited to get my hands on it. I think that the writing is a little bit more structured and a little bit more, not flowery, but just like it really does a good job at talking about important topics, and I feel like the chemistry between the characters and everything is so realistic, given the fact that the tropes aren't always as realistic, you know? I don't know if I'm making any sense with these, but I love them, and I wish I had a reading vlog of me reading them, but I don't, so moving on. Coming in at number 9 is The Heart Principle by Helen Huang, which I did not expect to love as much as this. This is the third book in the Kiss Quotient kind of companion series, and I had not read either of the previous ones. However, this did come in the first Illumicrate Afterlight box, which is a box specialized in romance. This did get pretty polarizing reviews because some people don't consider this to be a romance book. I don't agree. I really do think it is a romance, and I loved it. And after reading this, I went kind of on a binge and wanted to read everything Helen Huang has written. This does have representation for autism. The author of these novels is autistic, and we have autistic representation in the main female character here. This one follows a main character who is kind of getting out of a relationship. She's kind of on a break with this boy who she isn't really attracted to, but who her family really loves, and she's just kind of going along with it. And because she's kind of angry and really up in her feels, she decides she's going to have a one-night stand with a man and goes on this app and finds our main character, and they don't end up having a one-night stand. It is not a spoiler, but they get to know each other, and it is kind of like their story and everything that comes with it. Our main male character has a lot going on with him having a kind of business and his family and like societal expectations, and our main character, the female main character, is also dealing with burnout from her pianist work. No, it's not piano. Violin. What am I saying? She went viral when she was younger and she got all these opportunities in the music industry, but now she's burnt out and she's kind of like taking a sabbatical, and it's her having to deal with that and the pressures of family. There are trigger warnings for this, also for loss of a family member and a family member getting sick, so do check that out. But the writing in here, phenomenal. The romance, love it. The main male character in this was an absolute gem, and I just loved reading about complicated yet realistic relationships, because I think that these are struggles people actually do face, and it was interesting to see the representation added in here as well. And overall, I could not recommend this enough, and obviously I love it. It's made it to my top 10. Coming in at number 8 is a book that will stick with me forever. I loved it. Not Pretending Anymore by Vi Keelan and Penelope Ward. This is freaking amazing. I have a vlog reading this. I'll leave it in the cards and description if you guys want to check it out. But this follows Declan and, why am I blanking on the girl's name? And Molly. At the beginning of this novel, Molly is looking for a new roommate, and she would prefer obviously living with another girl. She has a lot of interviews and none of them are working out, and at the last minute Declan shows up and Molly tells him, like, I'd rather live with another woman. He eventually kind of convinces her otherwise, and they start being roommates. Both of them are attracted to other people, and so they decide to start fake dating to help each other out, but eventually catch feels, and it's all of the fake dating and roommate vibes put together. And it's also dual perspective books make everything better. And you guys, this was just perfect. The attraction and the pining and the conflicted feelings and them being going from roommates to friends and catching feels, and the kind of like jealousy and everything else combined was freaking fabulous. The writing in this, chef's kiss. This got me willing to read anything these authors either co-write or write by themselves. It was incredible. I loved it. It's so worth your read. I think this is available on Kindle Unlimited if you want to try it out. Trust me, if you like any of these tropes, read it. Again, so underhyped, underappreciated. Read this freaking book. It blew my mind. It blew my mind. Coming in at number 7, we have A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. This one I read during Becca's 48-hour book-off-a-thon. I'll leave that vlog in the cards as well if you want to check it out. And this is a YA mystery who follows a main character named Pip, who, as like her senior project, decided to work on a murder that happened in her town a few years ago. The case has been solved, but Pip doesn't believe that the authorities and everyone in the town has deemed the murderer as the proper one. Like, she thinks someone else committed the crime, and essentially she goes on this kind of manhunt to collect a bunch of clues, and she starts realizing that people have buried secrets that they didn't want to have uncovered, and Pip does a lot of dangerous things, and it's a lot of clue finding, and I just love the way this is formatted. It's kind of like multimedia, and I really was impressed with this. I was on the edge of my seat. I cannot wait to get to the sequel because I still haven't, because I'm trash. You can come for me at this point. I've been saying I'm gonna read the second book for like months now. Anywho, I adore this. It's been hyped over and over again. Everybody else loves this, but it definitely needed to have a spot on my list because I don't usually love and think about YA or mystery, any mystery books for that matter, as much as I think about this to this day. Absolutely loved it. Again, there are trigger warnings for this, especially with potential harm to pets, which I was a little bit uneased with, so do check that out. I think a lot of Goodreads reviews do mention the trigger warnings, but it's not said enough. There definitely are some trigger warnings in here, but it's so worth a read. Also, for that one, apparently the audiobooks are really good, so let me know if I should go down the audiobook route for my next like for the next books in the series. Coming in at number 6, also sorry if the light keeps changing, I'm facing windows and the weather's all over the place. Kingdom of the Wicked! I read this finally! I feel like y'all should be clapping for me in the comments. Thank you, thank you. Excuse the interruptions. If you are new here, which hello, thank you for being here if you are, Carrie Maniscalco is my favorite author of all time. Stalking Jack the Ripper is my favorite series of all time. And this was her foray kind of into fantasy romance, because Stalking Jack the Ripper is kind of like historical fiction murder mystery, whereas this, completely different, was very afraid I wasn't going to love it. It got 5 stars, obviously. I freaking adore this. If you have not seen any book talks or booktube videos about Kingdom of the Wicked, it essentially follows a main character named Amelia who has a twin sister, and they live in, I believe it's Sicily, in an Italian town, and they all work at this restaurant that her grandmothers have, and they are witches. Now, being a witch is kind of taboo. It's not something they are super open about, and in the beginning of this, we see that her sister, her twin sister, gets murdered, and Amelia finds her sister and is dead set on finding who killed her sister and getting revenge. Throughout this, she summons a prince of hell. There are 7 different ones in this world, and ends up working with this prince of hell for throughout this book to find who murdered her sister. Other revelations come around throughout the book, and the best part is the kind of romance that is starting to bloom between Amelia and Prince Wrath. And the next book in the series, Kingdom of the Cursed, I will have 3 or 4 editions of and plan on reading next year, and it is said to be new adult, so there will be steamy scenes between Amelia and Wrath. The end of this got me shook, and I cannot wait to see where it goes. I clearly loved this book heck of a ton, and I'm so happy that essentially this cements Carrie Maniscalco as one of my favorite authors ever, because she keeps writing genres that I'm not used to. Like, I'm not a fantasy reader, clearly, and I still adored the heck out of this. I do think I have a vlog for this one as well if you want to see my reactions to this book. But read it if you haven't, and also pick up Stalking Jack the Ripper, because y'all are sleeping on that book. But anyways, moving on. We are now in the top 5 best books, and I just spit on my camera, I'm so sorry. Coming in on number 5 is another romance y'all are sleeping on, and that is Founded on Goodbye by Kate Singleton. This, I also have a full dedicated video to reading this because I found this book on Book Talk. The author was kind of promoting it, and I made a video discussing, like, should we trust the marketing that authors do on their own TikToks so that we buy the books and the whole shebang, and clearly I loved it. It got 5 stars. Y'all need to read this. I'm serious, like, I don't know how else to push this book, but y'all are sleeping on this. This is amazing. Amazing, I tell you. So, this follows Nora and Nash. It is again a dual perspective novel following my favorite trope, which is the famous person. So Nora is actually a background dancer for concerts, for shows, for tours, and during one of her auditions, she is actually asked if she can, like, be on this, like, show, go on the tour, but not for the reason she thinks. They don't necessarily want Nora as a background dancer, which she ends up being because, like, they're trying to be sneaky about it, but they're trying to get her to make Nash, who is a famous singer, fall in love with her so she can then proceed to break his heart so that he can write more breakup songs and bring in the cash. So it's all a publicity stunt where the marketing people for Nash want him to get his heart broken without knowing so that he is back to his vulnerable state, which sells more stuff, you know, as most breakup albums do. And it is their story of her not liking him at first and thinking it's going to be impossible for them to end up in a relationship, and then slowly they become friends and have a relationship. Meanwhile, you know she is going to break his heart, and all the story ensues. Again, I freaking love the famous person rock star kind of romance, and this hit all the check boxes on my list. This was freaking amazing. I loved it. It is definitely a little bit more steamy. Like, this is not YA, and y'all, if you like the same books I do, again, pick this up. I won't say too much more, but pick this book up, please! Coming in at number 4 is another romance book I absolutely adored, and that is Bet the Farm by Stacey Hart, which, again, y'all are sleeping on it. I don't know what to tell you. Stacey Hart is an author I actually discovered in 2021 who has a pretty significant backlist, which I'm very excited to dive into. But this I wanted to specifically pick up because I love anything to do with farms, country living. I went to high school in a farm-ish town, so anything that can like bring back the feels, I will pick up. And this cover, chef's kiss. This follows Olivia and Jake, again, dual perspective, because that's what I need in my life. And essentially, Olivia left the family farm a while ago, and after her dad or grandfather passes away, she inherits half the farm and goes back. And at first, I don't think she remembers that it's only half the farm, and then she goes there and realizes that the farmhand got the other half of the farm, and they have very conflicting ideas on what to do with the farm. Olivia wants to try to branch out and do different things with it and kind of bring in more ways to make money because the farm has been struggling, whereas the farmhand, Jake, kind of wants to keep things the same way. They butt heads, and eventually they have kind of like this bet for the other half of the farm, and as the bet progresses and time progresses with both of them living on the farm, they end up falling in love. The banter, amazing. The scenes in the farm were phenomenal. The romance, chef's kiss, and I think there are a lot of important discussions about regrets and what you do with your life and everything else in here as well. I think that both characters really had an amazing chemistry and held their own. Both characters were very strong, and I rooted for their love story 110%. I kind of wish it was my love story at this point. I love this concept so much. I love the setting, and it was just adorable, and the farm animals, and then everything that comes into play to kind of create a conflict, obviously, because it can't be a long and steady stream all the time. So it was very realistic. Incredible writing. Stacey Hart is an incredible author, and the writing style in here, chef's kiss. One of my favorite reasons why I love this. I know I'm not being very coherent with these, but I just want you to read them all. Coming in at number 3, which at this point they could all be tied for first place. I love these books so much. Hollowpox by Jessica Townsend, which Hollowpox, The Hunt for Morgan Crow, the 3rd book in the Nevermore series. This is the special edition from Waterstones. Hollowpox is actually the first book I read in 2021 because I always try to be intentional with my first read to set the tone, and boy did it set the tone. If you don't know, Nevermore is a middle grade series following a main character named Morgan Crow, who is a cursed child, and on her 11th or 12th birthday, she is supposed to die, but before that happens, she is whisked away to the land of Nevermore by this man called Juniper North. And in order to be able to stay in Nevermore, she has to go through a bunch of trials to get into this society in order for her to be safe. And this is the 3rd book where a lot of different things come into play, which I obviously cannot talk about because it would spoil the whole thing. If you have not picked this up, this is better than Harry Potter, which Harry Potter is kind of tinted because J.K. Rowling is trash. If you're looking for something to substitute in for Harry Potter, this is it. Like, I'm building myself a Nevermore shrine at this point. I love it with all of my being. There are LGBTQ elements in these stories. Morgan is a wonderful character. The society and the school she attends is freaking amazing. The magic and the problematics in this story are amazing, and so is the villain. And I cannot gush about the series enough. It is worth all the hype it's been getting in the last few years. This series is set to have 7 books, and we should be getting Silverborn I think October of 2022. It's still a long wait, but your girl is hyped. Coming in at number 2, I cannot believe I finally read this. Capturing the Devil by Carrie Maniscalco. You heard me gush about Stalking Jack the Ripper previously. This is the last book in the series, and you absolutely need to see this clip of me bawling my eyes out, so let me just insert it here for your viewing pleasure. This is me when I was reading the end of Capturing the Devil. Now that I've made you laugh, I think it explains all the reasons why you need to read these books. I cannot, again, talk about this because it is the 4th book. However, Stalking Jack the Ripper is the story of Audrey Rose, who lives in the Victorian era and who is very much into science and is an apprentice under her uncle to study like bodies and solve murders. And at the beginning of the 1st book, a murder happens and Audrey Rose ends up teaming up with her uncle's other apprentice, Thomas Cresswell, to solve the murder and investigate. And then it is the story of Audrey Rose kind of becoming herself and learning about her passions in a society where women should not be studying science, and honestly, just studying dead bodies in that time was kind of taboo, whether you were a girl or a boy. And it's her navigating that world, as well as her beautiful love story with Thomas Cresswell. I love Thomas with all of my heart. He is one of my favorite characters ever. Their romance story is freaking incredible, and I could gush about it for hours, so I won't. But I do want to say that later on in the series, we do have representation for handicapped. Carrie Maniscalco does have a disability, I believe, due to Lyme disease, and she incorporates some of that in Audrey Rose, obviously not with Lyme disease, but I'm just saying. And I think it is wonderful to see that in the stories, and not a lot of people mention that, and I think it's very well done. And coming in at number 1, the best book I read in 2021. Drum roll, please. Ladies and gentlemen, Amari and the Night Brothers. I love this book. I want to reread it all the time. I freaking adore this. Amari and the Night Brothers is actually another fantasy middle grade book, which very much compares to the Evermore series. This I would also compare to Percy Jackson, Men in Black, a whole shebang of other things. It is a cross between all the most fantastic things ever, and I love it to pieces. I also want to shout out how lucky I am, because I have a signed copy dedicated to me that I won on Twitter, and I'm still not over it. It's in my little book shrine, and I love it. I also have my other copy, which is tabbed. I love Amari. Amari and the Night Brothers follows a main character named Amari, who is a young girl. This is middle grade aged, and her brother has been missing, and the police are not very cooperative, and they're like, oh, you know, he probably got into some sketchy stuff, as racist police would say, and Amari is not from the nicest neighborhood, and they're like, you know, he probably ran away or got tangled into some weird stuff. Turns out Amari gets a suitcase that brings her to this like secret society that's kind of like Men in Black, where her brother was a part of, and he actually did go missing. And Amari never knew that all of these like it's like the, I can't even talk. It's the Bureau of Supernatural Affairs, and so Amari had no idea all of these supernatural things actually existed, and it's her coming to terms with that, finding out her powers, and going out on the look for her brother. There are sketchy people in this. There are mean people who are mean to Amari because she is different than them, and it has a really good discussion on racism and societal expectations and not coming from wealth or a different background or not being knowledgeable on this world and how people interpret Amari, and I just love how resilient she is, the friends she makes along the way, and like the villains and the drama. I cannot wait for the next book in the series. Amari and the Great Game comes out end of April 2022. I have already pre-ordered the American copy, the Waterstones exclusive edition. It's all coming to me. And I know I did a terrible job of explaining this, but you just need to read it. I swear to you, it will not be a waste of time. If you like anything fantasy, secret societies, magic schools, quest stories, want to support BIPOC authors, it's got the whole thing, and I honestly think it should have won the Goodreads Choice Awards for the middle grade, but Rick Riordan always wins. He's also a king, so can't be too mad. But brilliant. So those were all the books on my top 10. Let me know in the comments what your top 10 or favorite book of the year was. And if you just wanna say you were here, drop a blue emoji in the comments. And with that, I'll see you very soon with another video. Bye guys, happy reading.